Audio. Okay, here we go. Hello, everybody. And yes, I didn't stream on Thursday or Friday because nothing really happened. And also, I just didn't feel like it. That and that are both synced up. So I wouldn't expect this to go over an hour, but we'll see what happens. I have everything ready. And while we wait for people to show up, to avoid going over the major things too early or initially without everybody here. We'll start with some not necessarily minor stuff, but stuff that is not title material. So around here, offshore of Brazil, a new large oil field was found recently. New oil and gas fields are still found all the time every year, but this one was actually much larger than normal, similar to the one that was found offshore of Namibia a year and a half ago. This one looks like it's about 8 billion barrels, which could produce a initial jumpstart production rate of between 500,000 and 1 million barrels per day, depending on the type of rock, the level of porosity, etc. So for total long-term production, where's the projections? There it is. Everything as it stands already had been looking like Brazil was probably going to peak up around 5.5 or maybe in the upper fives around 2040 or so, or a bit after. So if you add this on, and this would come online somewhere in the early 2030s, that should push Brazil's likely total historical peak up to somewhere over six, maybe up over 6.5. We'll see when it actually gets there. And also, for anybody who's here already, who's not familiar with it, or who already is familiar with it, but doesn't know the most recent development, which is the same as shut up, which is the same as every other recent development. If you go down in the description under the PayPal and Patreon links, there's a free access Drive folder link, which takes you to a Google Drive with folders containing all kinds of different sets of graphs and data. These are all free to access all the time. There's no paywall or anything. PayPal, Patreon, YouTube, super chats or thanks or whatever buttons is appreciated and helps encourage things, but it is not and never will be a requirement. But I was just going to go here to show that you guys were wrong. You thought I would run out of new graphs to make, but I still defeated you. I still have more graphs. There are always more graphs to be created. So I've now started making the coal consumption graphs for the world's various countries, of the major consumers at least. So here you have China, Zhongguo, for example, in billion tons per year, hitting what's probably roughly their peak right now of around 5 or so. Let's see who's after them. Germany, Deutschland. And yes, before the reunification, if you draw a line at reunification, the stuff before then is a total of both West and East Germany prior to reunification. And then at the reunification line, obviously everything after that is singular Germany. India heading towards 1.5 billion tons per year, etc. So there's now coal graphs. That is yet another addition on top of everything else. You got the CO2 emissions graphs. You got GDP graphs, GDP adjusted by inflation or for inflation to current dollars. I still have to update those. Those are all 2 years old because I was lazy last year. Prices adjusted to inflation over time. The electricity demand graphs, demand by sector for each country's breakdown of what percent of their electricity comes from which source. Uh, Production of different metals and minerals from mines, all the oil production, demand, etc. graphs, everything. So that's all there as always. Now, I've allotted enough time, so we can probably go ahead and begin. And we'll start with Sudan. Let me check everything. All right. Just you two for the moment. But anyways, so situation in Sudan changed again. And where's Epic Pen? Come on. Do that, do that. Switch in here. And now we can continue. So situation was prior that the RSF controlled like roughly this, very rough, and the lines aren't exactly well defined. But over the last few weeks, the government has rapidly started winning, actually, and the new line is somewhere more around like here, again, very rough. So they've actually begun roughly sweeping them, and pretty quickly. And parts of the development of that have come from the RSF getting cut off from the northern angle, as a lot of their weapons and stuff and equipment they had that was being given to them was coming down through the open desert in the northwest from Libya, where the UAE ships stuff into them that then gets sent down to the RSF. However, as of a few weeks ago, Egypt and Turkey, as well, operating from air bases in Egypt, have begun airstriking the various trans desert convoys that have been bringing those supplies down to the RSF. So the RSF has now been partially cut off, though not entirely, as they are still getting some of their stuff through Chad. Gets flown in or it gets shipped by the UAE to other countries in the general area and then gets funneled through Chad. And the reason for the other portion of the reasoning behind the shift is that the government, the primary government forces in Sudan, started getting their own external backing much more heavily on the part of Saudi Arabia and Turkey, way up there, who have begun rapidly supplying them, as Saudi Arabia again wants to pretend that it's like a major global player. They want to pretend that they're like a legitimate power. So they've already flexed their control over Yemen, although not really, because you can't really get rid of the Houthis unless you actually do genocide. But Saudi Arabia is probably not above doing genocide. So they're one of their big things is they want to at least pretend to be in control of the Red Sea. So Egypt is kind of sort of in their pocket because Saudi Arabia is one of Egypt's primary debt lenders and also their primary fuel supplier, as Egypt's domestic oil production is only about half of what its domestic consumption has grown to. And if the RSF were to win and take control of Sudan, then Sudan's coast would therefore belong to the RSF, which effectively belongs to the UAE, which would mean the UAE wins in the Saudi UAE rivalry in that regard. So Saudi Arabia cannot allow that to happen. And Turkey, Turkey does not want the RSF in power because uh, they're a bit more radical and non not exactly leash obedient. They've also, I mean, they've been doing those like 160,000 person burning piles of dead bodies genocides out in the Sudanese desert. So and all the mass starvation stuff. So they don't want the RSF in power because they don't want the further unleashability and instability in the general region, as the Turkish government does kind of want to be one of the dominant say-so powers in the region, and Erdogan does have he does have some revanchist Ottoman Empire dreams that he knows he can't actually like do those in the way that like Putin is trying to do the Russian Empire, but he can still do them through pressure and indirect control or arm twisting of various countries' governments. And even so, Saudi Arabia and Turkey have been funding now and buying and giving a bunch of weapons to the government forces and doing various drone strikes for them against the RSF, which has helped the government forces in their advance forward against them. And Egypt has been helping as well, again, doing those airstrikes on the supply convoys coming down from Libya. As Egypt, even on its own, even if it wasn't being told to by Saudi Arabia and Turkey, Egypt would also be aiding the Sudanese government as well, because the Sudanese government is aligned with Egypt on the whole anti-Ethiopian dam thing, and Sudan already kind of not so quietly agreed to let Egypt use air bases in Sudan for easier striking of the dam if it ever comes to that, which it eventually will. So Egypt prefers that the current government of Sudan remain in power because they're a government that is aligned with them. And the RSF probably wouldn't like the Ethiopian dam either, but there's no guarantee of that. Whereas the Egyptian government knows that the current Sudanese government is with them on opposition to the dam and eventual strikes against the dam. So that has shifted about, and we'll have to wait and see for a few more weeks, few more months, see if that momentum continues, if the UAE ramps up, even though part of these supply lines have been cut off, if it ramps up its supply through other ways, and if it and Saudi Arabia plus Turkey get into like a weapons spending war to try to outcompete with each other to see who can fund their proxy group the best. So that situation is ongoing, and that's how it has changed up to this moment. Let me drink some water. See, we get everybody else in. One more. There are 10 people total, but 3 talkers. Okay. Fresh Ukraine developments. Make sure everything's visible. So, further drone and missile strikes on the power plants in and around Belgorod, the major city after which the oblast is named, and now on Bryansk as well. And the damage has compounded to Belgorod being consistently in total blackouts every other day. And where is the actual announcement? And the actual regional governor announced that Belgorod will now be without heat and hot water until April. Russia had been using a workaround to get a hold of Starlink, but they've been cut off from that. So now they're resorting to balloons, I guess. They're hanging like little, they're hanging improv rip-off Starlink terminals from the underside of balloons, basically. Yeah, Bryansk got its power knocked out and is still out as of the moment, but we'll see if that gets restored. But if strikes continue on the Bryansk one for the city of Bryansk, then it could quickly head for a Belgorod-esque situation. The oil export terminal down in Krasnodar was hit again. More portside storage tanks and the like pipelines that transfer the oil onto the oil tankers. And in terms, oh no, wait, there's a map on here. I'm not going to try to match it up or try to draw it because it'll look horrible. But so, let's see, how big can we get this? Ooh, decently big. Okay, so you guys remember I talked about a while ago around here. At least I'm pretty sure it was from this one. Russia had been doing this slow branch out. They've been trying to do a encirclement thing. I think they got up to here, but I'm not positive. That took about half a year, and then a month or two ago, that progress got erased. Ukraine actually collapsed that in a matter of a few days, and it's not registering my power cord. Come on, register. Okay, there we go. And now these blue areas are recently liberated areas, so things have shifted, and now Ukraine is actually the one pushing forward over the last few weeks. Not like massive counteroffensive stuff, but they are actually advancing. So for about 2 years or so, it was Russia really gradually creeping forward cornfield by cornfield. Now they are retreating cornfield by cornfield at not the same slow pace, but not a fast pace. The pushback is going faster than Russia's push forward was, but not like hugely faster. At like a speed factor of 0.3 or something versus what had been a speed factor of 0.2. So the situation there has also shifted. Oh yeah, I clicked. I forgot that. Was there anything else from there that I'm forgetting about? Oh yeah, the forgot the oil refinery got hit in Volgograd again, right after repairs from the last one, from the last time had just about been completed and stuff had restarted. Now the refinery has to shut down again because it got hit yet again. And I think I'm forgetting something else with all that in the general area. Was it that? No, that was just more Volgograd stuff. Cuba, I'll talk about that in a second. No, okay, it looks like that was it. Briefly on Iran, received just short of straight up public confirmation that I believe it's the George Washington, but the carrier strike group that is undergoing or was undergoing a practice exercise out here near the Bermuda Triangle to practice fighting Cthulhu or whatever, is about to be sent over to, or if not in the Persian Gulf, then close to the Persian Gulf, where the Abraham Lincoln Strike Group is, along with other random individual destroyers and ships that have already come in, plus the various F-15s, 35s, 16s, A-10s, etc., that have been flown into the region, along with even the UK now starting to fly stuff in, and all of the air defense systems that have been confirmed to be fully set up now across everywhere. So the buildup continues growing, and it might be a slight diversion. We might be about to just start doing it, and the second carrier group order might just be like a thing to make Tehran think that it's not coming for another 2 weeks, and instead the strikes might like be about to start in a matter of days. It would probably be on a weekend when it begins, at least like it usually is. But I think, yeah, it would take if the George Washington left, like say today, it would take a week and a half, like 10 days for it to get there or something. Or actually, no, I forgot the slower transit times it has to take when it gets through the narrow passages. So yeah, that adds an extra bit. So it would take close to 2 weeks to get there. So if it is waiting for that, then it's not going to happen until like at least the end of the month or the start of next month. But again, also could that also could just be a sort of disinfo diversion, as a second bunch of 70 to 80 F-35s and F-18s wouldn't really be necessary given how much of Iran's AD systems were already taken out and how much of its uh, remaining not exactly functional Air Force was already neutralized. You wouldn't really need that much. The big thing Iran really has is that it probably still has a fair number of ballistic and cruise missiles that can lob out at people. But you can't really counter that by flooding the sky with a bunch of hornets. That in the end is more of a general air defense battery solution system. So there is a chance that the second carrier group announcement is kind of a disinfo thing, but it might still be getting sent there for real anyways, just to, for the sake of overkill. Now back over here in Cuba. Let me check chat first. I guess I mean that was my stupid joke for that was just my stupid joke for regarding people saying like because people were saying on Twitter that it would take at least a month to get that carry group over there because they can't stop uh, this practice thing. They can't stop doing this drill that they're doing, even though they can. You can stop literally anything. Like Russia could stop its invasion right now and go home. This carrier group can just stop whatever their practice scenario they're doing is and sail out east over to the Persian Gulf. So that was just my dumb joke that I made up for like, no, I guess this is something too important. They're practicing fighting Cthulhu for the fate of the universe or whatever. Now, Cuba is on the deal with before Taiwan happens list, since Venezuela down there was already dealt with. Iran is in line to be dealt with. What Cuba had kind of already collapsed. Uh, Power availability was pretty crap. Water availability was even worse. General economic situation was in the abyss. But now, under the current U.S. administration, a total oil and fuels blockade of Cuba has been enacted. And as an island nation, as is the usual case, most of Cuba's power plants, despite despite it, you know, being still not the best, once you're getting up to large scale power generation and not just talking about like say the Bahamas where each island has like 40,000 people, even though you're talking about 9 million people in this case, as an island nation, most of their power plants are either giant diesel plants or fuel oil plants, just because it's the second most readily adjustable with and with like readily easily stored fuel. Technically, natural gas plants are the most moment to moment output adjustable, but natural gas storage requires either a specific specific like fractured caverns underground to keep the natural gas pumped into and then let it flow up out of, or it requires, those large storage spheres that have a bunch of complicated cryogenic stuff that are not the easiest things to pay for and maintain. So, Cuba in present day still ran with diesel and fuel oil, but now they've been cut off from that. So, their power plants are running out of fuel, and the island has been going dark. And there's articles from actual professional people and everything. Like here from this put out the blue. Yeah, the blue on the map represents where the lights seen at night from satellites over the last few weeks have begun disappearing from those particular cities. It's just been going black now. As of course, the capital, it is, always going to be the one place that gets to hold on to the fuel to be the last one to run out of it. So you can see here is Guantanamo Bay, so that's U.S. So that's the outlier there. But you can kind of see the nationwide blackout is kind of creeping its way up from the southeastern end up the island, and Santa Clara is thus probably going to be the next one to go dark. And then basically all that's left is Havana. Now, the reasoning behind all this is probably to induce a full outright national collapse, to then use as like a speech giving justification for a military intervention and regime replacement, since it's been made pretty apparent that removal of the regime and uh, re-friendlyization of Cuba is one of the Pentagon's get it done before Taiwan happens goals. So the means of the blockade is and making them go into full national blackouts, which will then obviously lead to like total actual national collapse, is to probably uh, jump up the manufactured public consent for direct intervention and rearrangements of the Cuban political system, as Venezuela has been taken care of. Iran is being lined up to be taken care of, and Cuba is one of the other goals. The only other unfriendly nation uh, in the Americas would be Nicaragua, but Nicaragua is effectively worthless. Like China and Russia never even bothered like setting up anything there or really doing anything with them, and Nicaragua themselves can't exactly do anything. And Nicaragua has been emptying out. Like people have been pouring out of there just like they were pouring out of Cuba. It's been easier for Nicaraguans because it's on land. But so Nicaragua, uh, the Pentagon or the actual U.S. government decision makers probably will kind of just not really do anything about, just let it sit there, since it's effectively a non-threat. But Venezuela needed to be shifted from frowny face over to U.S. smiley face. Oh, you can even tell the smile is strained there with the way I drew it. Now, the same needs to be done to Cuba in their eyes, and trying to get all of this done before Taiwan happens, since that's going to be the big focus. That, yes, despite persistent refusal to believe, we are going into that ourselves. We are jumping right in. Maybe not jumping in the moment it starts. Maybe like we'll wait a few days, see how things go initially, and use that to gauge to what level we need to directly force ourselves into that situation. But the Pentagon wants everything, all those other concerns, like over and done with. On basically have a to-do list with you have the lines on the paper. You got the to-do list, and you had Venezuela, that's checked off. You got Iran, that's ongoing, so we'll draw a circle. You got Cuba, that's coming up. Is there anything else? Uh, Not really. So then you have Taiwan, TW, and you put a big star at that one because that's the big one. That's the big concern. Let me drink some more water, then I'll look at you guys in chat. Ugh. There's nothing from anybody in chat. Everybody in chat is a corpse. How long have I been? Oh, 33 minutes. Okay, wow. That's the first time ever that I've actually run under time. I said an hour at first because I assumed that, like usual, I was going to end up running like too long, but actually turned out under time. Now let me try to think real quick if there's anything else. Other oil and gas developments. So Algeria, you guys remember, or rather, I'll show you to show off the free resource drive again. Guys want to learn about this, get access to this and everything, scroll back towards earlier, the start of the stream. But oil production graph, Algeria. So Algeria peaked up at, you can see around 1.4, declines down to around 1, got some restoration from some enhanced recovery stuff, but background would have still been declining, and we were waiting to see if it would get back up to 1 or fall short of it. And it looks like capability wise, it in the background has declined under it. As Algeria, once the cuts were over, was restoring its production, and that restoration slowed down. and has come to a halt, got to a height of 972,000, but now has started creeping down a little bit. Most coming in at 970 or 971. We'll see. Wait a few months, watch the pattern, see if that was just like a one-time halt, or if this is as high as it was getting back up to, and now it's going to resume declining. Now, granted, their decline was pretty gradual. It was only like 2 or 3 thousand barrels per day down by per month or so. Also, in milestones, Azerbaijan, you guys remember or are familiar with it, peaked at, now that's Australia, peaked up at about 1.1 million barrels per day. They are now, after declining for about 15 years, they are now down to under half of their peak amount. As of the past month, January, they fell under 550,000, coming in at 548,000 barrels per day. Now, there were other times where they fell that low because of like explosions, or that there were uh, extreme circumstances, storms, etc., that caused shutdowns. But in terms of actual decline slope capability, etc., they are now down under half of where their peak was. And Iran continues not being able to keep it together, no matter how much repressurizing gas they forcibly inject into those fields. They were able to get all the way back up to 3.4, but after hitting that, I think 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, they're back down to 3.13. Okay. Was there anything else that I'm forgetting? No, nothing with you guys. Nothing with you guys, at least not that I remember. Already dealt with you. I don't think there was any other major sub-Saharan Africa stuff. And I already talked about the super large field offshore Brazil. All right, so I think that's probably it. Uh, Maybe I might make some of those, but I mean, I kind of already mentioned repeatedly that geothermal will literally work anywhere. You just have to be willing to pay to drill deep enough. The only reason we only do it around like volcanoes and fault lines is because it's really cheap and easy to do it there when you only have to go down like a few thousand feet, not even a whole mile, before you find like 600-degree rocks. It, you scroll back for the Cuba stuff. You can scroll back a bit. We already went through that one. They have been not entirely, but almost entirely cut off to the point where, since their power plants, as with most island nations, except for really large, really populous ones, most of Cuba's power plants are diesel fuel power plants or giant fuel oil power plants, and they're not getting the fuel or the diesel, so the nation is gradually slipping into a full national blackout. The light blue shading on the map is cities and areas that have gone black at night on satellites over the last few weeks. The only remaining cities, regions with power are Santa Clara and Havana. And Santa Clara, you can kind of see, is already starting to go black there. And this was from 2 days ago. So chances are Santa Clara is out of power by now. And the only one left holding on to power plants, diesel or fuel oil is Havana. Close that, close that. All right, let me take one more sip of water, and unless anything comes up from chat, then that's probably going to be where the stream ends. It was, I mean, it was a short one, anyways. This was only 40 minutes. It doesn't look like anything else response prompting, at least, is going to come up. So that's probably going to be the end. So thank you everybody who showed up here, and I will see you around next.